On the 23rd of August, 1926, 100 years ago this very day, the most famous face on earth went still in a New York hospital room. He was 31. Within a day, the street outside his coffin was broken glass and police horses. A century later, he still lies where they left him, in a grave that was never meant to be his. This is the week America invented the modern celebrity death. It begins with a fishing trip that was never taken. That Monday morning, August the 23rd, the Daily Kennebec Journal of Maine went to press with one final midnight bulletin. Film star still near death, word given at midnight. By the time America read it over breakfast, the news from New York had already outrun it. Case file number 5 is open. The film star was born Rudolpho Guglielmi in the south of Italy. He landed in New York at 18 with almost nothing. Polished brass, washed dishes, danced in cabarets for $50 a week. The movies renamed him Rudolph Valentino. And in 1921, one tango in the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse made him not a star, but an obsession. The Chic, Blood and Sand, and the press crowned him the great lover of the age, with 5 years to live. But not all of America worshipped. To a certain kind of American man, Valentino was an insult with pomaded hair. 1 month before his death, an anonymous Chicago editorial blamed him for a face powder machine in a men's washroom, asked why nobody had quietly drowned him years ago, and dismissed him as a pink powder puff. Valentino, stung, challenged the writer to a fight. No one stepped forward. Hold on to that insult. It rides with this story all the way to a hospital bed. On a Sunday afternoon in mid-August, Valentino collapsed in his New York apartment. At the Polyclinic Hospital, surgeons opened him for 2 conditions at once: acute appendicitis and gastric ulcers. The papers called it the double operation. For a week, the country lived on hospital bulletins. He rallied. So well the doctors stopped issuing them. He was thought to be safely on the road to recovery. Then, over the weekend, the relapse, pleurisy, septic poisoning. Monday's front page in Maine carried the overnight word, reports of a change for the better were erroneous. The star was sleeping fitfully after a night of intense suffering. In his last hours of clear thought, he had talked with one of his doctors, not about dying, but about a fishing trip in Maine. The greatest thing I am looking forward to, he called it. Soon afterwards, he lapsed into a coma from which he never roused. Death occurred, said the Evening Star that same afternoon at 10 minutes past noon. And the Wire sent out a sentence like no other. Rudolph Valentino, the greatest lover of them all in the history of motion pictures, died today. His age was 31 years. By nightfall, he was on Washington's front page. By morning, on them all. In Arizona, the Douglas Daily Dispatch stripped one line across the entire page. Rudolph Valentino dies in New York. Famous movie actor succumbs. In Maine, his death shared the front page with the death of a United States senator, and the senator held the bigger type. Pleurisy attack, immediate cause of death. Peritonitis followed double operation 8 days ago, an infection no fame could reach. Then the story stopped being about the man and became about the crowd. Covered with a cloth of gold, the body left the hospital by the private entrance, bound for a Broadway funeral church. Hundreds flocked in, then thousands. Until, the Wire reported, the crowds were blocking all traffic and police reserves had to be called to restore order. Inside, he was laid in the gold room of the establishment where the celebrated dead lay in state. Oscar Hammerstein, Anna Held, and there was talk of preserving him forever by the same process used on the great Caruso. Before the body was moved, the death certificate was filed. Cause of death, ruptured gastric ulcer, general peritonitis. But look closely at the name. The certificate was made out in the name of Rodolfo Guglielmi, the screen star's real name. Valentino, the idol, was an invention. The man who actually died that afternoon was an immigrant almost nobody in that crowd had truly known. That crowd had an appointment. Tuesday, 4 o'clock. Tuesday, the funeral parlor set 4 o'clock as the hour its doors would open, and by 4 o'clock, more than 12,000 people stood massed in the street in the rain. Rich and poor jam street to view body of Valentino, ran the headline. Crowds, said the wire, such as gather to pay tribute to a dead president or a king. The doors opened, a plate glass window gave way, 3 women were cut on the jagged glass, another went down under a police horse. Coats, vests and shirts were torn from their wearers and tossed into the air by grappling hands. A second window broke. Wednesday's paper said it best. Valentino alive. Never drew such a crowd as Valentino dead. Inside, the mourning was becoming a production. An honor guard in black shirts appeared at the coffin, sent, the story went, by Mussolini himself. They were hired actors, arranged by a press agent. Pola Negri announced she had been engaged to marry Valentino, and collapsed with grief, more than once, seldom far from a photographer. Darker items moved on the wires, rumors of poison, denied by the doctors, reports of despairing admirers who did not survive the news. Somewhere between grief and the performance of it, the line disappeared. For good. The funeral came the following Monday. Broadway packed during funeral of Rudolph Valentino. Main read the next morning. Solid walls of humanity lined the route of the cortege, from the funeral church at 66th Street to the little church of St. Malachy on 42nd. Past the electric signs that blazoned his name, where he had once washed dishes for $50 a week. 2 women followed the coffin. Pola Negri, engaged to him, she announced, and Jeanne Acker, the first wife. Then a train carried him west, to Hollywood, and a second funeral on a second coast. There, the file should close. It does not. Valentino earned millions and died owing more than he owned. In Hollywood, there was no tomb, because nobody had planned for him to die at 31. So a friend stepped in. June Mathis, the screenwriter who discovered him for The Four Horsemen, lent him a spare crypt in her family's row at the Hollywood Cemetery. Temporary, everyone agreed. A few weeks until a memorial could be raised. June Mathis was dead within a year. The memorial was never built, and Valentino is still there, 100 years later. A borrowed crypt in another family's wall. One more thing. For decades afterward, the story goes, a woman dressed all in black came to that crypt every 23rd of August, veil lowered, a single red rose in her hand, and left without a word. Imitators followed until nobody could say who the first lady in black had been or what Valentino was to her. So the question this desk leaves open is not how he died. It is what died with him. A man who made no laws and won no wars had stopped America in its tracks and put 12,000 mourners in the street, some of them through plate glass. Was that love? Was it hysteria? Or the first rehearsal? For the way fame works now. Pick one and tell the desk in the comments. This has been the Century Desk. Every week we open the newspapers from exactly 100 years ago. Next Sunday, the desk goes back to New Jersey, to the murdered minister and the choir singer, and the family finally under arrest. The widow's brother and cousin sit in a county jail, refused bail, and a witness they call the pig woman says she saw it all. Case file number 6 reopens the Hall Mills murders. Subscribe, so you are at the desk when it does.